Mr. Tunde has learned how to develop business model, which he immediately starts working on for the solar project he wants to execute. However, he doesn't have the finance to undertake his project due to the initial capital expenditure. He remembers that Mr. Greco had mentioned to him that financing is available for solar projects. He goes back to Mr. Greco to ask him how the project can be financed. Welcome to Financing Renewable Energy Projects.
Okay. Off. My name is Rashid Israel Bonnier, MD for Greco Academy. Today, our topic of discussion will be financing renewable energy projects. Next slide. Our presentation outline will be following these 6 different topics, starting from the introduction to renewable energy financing. We talk about the renewable energy financing, the delivery mechanism. We'll, at the middle of the training, discuss case studies that are applicable in carrying out projects in Nigeria. From there, we'll be talking about the risk assessment and management briefly. And finally, Greco Financial modeling, what is actually available from Greco Academy in terms of financing. Next slide. Introduction to renewable energy financing. We all know that access to energy has been hampered by financing. Although not solely financing, however, financing seems to be the most prevalent among the challenges that is holding users from adopting renewable energy. It is on this note that we are saying now, let's assume that a developer is interested in financing a project. The question now is, what opportunity, what method of financing are available to such a developer? We are also looking at it from the user perspective. A user wants to use a solar home system and do not have these financial resources to pay for these products outside. What financing opportunities are available to such person? These are some of the things that we'll be talking about in brief during this session. There is no doubt that financing institutions play key in speeding up access to modern energy, not only among the poor, but also within the medium income earner. Now, what advantages could this user get from the use of this technology? One, based on the picture here, they could combat climate change, promote inclusive growth and human development, and finally build to intercontinental with benefit. Next slide. When we talk about financing delivery method, we're looking at it from either project financing in terms of developers looking for a financing model, or we look at it from the user financing method. Now, What opportunity, especially let's look at it from the solar PV installations, what opportunity of RE financing is available to a project developer? One, we have debt, whereby the project developer looks for debt financing either from a bank, a microfinance bank, a commercial bank, international development corporation. Another method of project financing could be through equity, grants, which could be from international organization, government, and so on. Next, it may be through PPA, power purchase agreement, whereby the user have an agreement with the developer to install such energy projects on their facility while they pay based on a particular agreement. A project financing will also be through overdraft, carbon finance like the CDLA or the VER. Through crowdfunding or hybrid of the above listed. So, as a developer, you need to really sit down and look at all these means of getting finance and see which one will best pay the business better. Next, on the slide, we'll be talking about the user financing. Yes, we look at it from consumer credit, dealer car sales, partial grant or subsidy, and fee for service. These four methods are the way in which an end user can actually get energy products for use without paying outrightly. Is either he or she pays through fee for service, whereby you only pay for the fee of the service based on the service you are getting. Two, the use of partial grant or subsidy as it is applicable to the REA platform, Rural Electrification Agency platform in Nigeria. Third is when a user decides to pay cash outrightly for the product, 100%. And lastly, through the use of consumer credit. So, these are the four methods in which a end user energy product could be financed. Now, next slide. Let's look at a case study of an hypothetical renewable energy project in Nigeria. As we have said initially, there are different methods and means in which a renewable energy project could be financed. If we look at it from the grant process, in Nigeria we could look at the Rural Electrification Agency, how it is being financed, how their projects are being financed through grants. We have the PBG, which is known as the Performance Grant Method. We also have the USDF, of America Development Agency. All these organizations have their grant procedure and process. So a developer will need to follow their procedures in order to in order to enjoy the opportunity of the grants available. Grants will either be in terms of feasibility studies, it could be in terms of technical assistance, and it could even be in terms of pilot established project. Next on our radar is concessional loan. Let's talk about concessional loan for long-term loan with low interest. Organizations that carry such mode of financing projects include All-On, PFAN, AFDB, Beta Vet, and Bank of Industry. These are just few of the organizations that give concessional loan for energy projects in Nigeria. Thirdly, we'll be looking at the conventional loan, that's the loan we get from either a microfinance bank or a commercial bank. Normally, these loans are of short-term duration and they are always of high interest rate. Banks like Greco Bank, Fidelity, FCNB, Sterling Bank, Zenith Bank, and so on give such loan to their customers. Looking at the picture, next, at the bottom of this slide, we'll see a project developer on one side and the investor on the other side trying to meet, but there is a gap between them. This gap needs to be filled in order for them to actually carry out a business. So, next slide, we'll be talking about risk assessment and management in a very short way. Reason is this: risk assessment and management will actually be carried out by the lender, because they are the ones that actually need to carry out the risk involved in giving out their money or funds to a developer or a user. So, when we talk about or hear about risk assessment, we are talking about what the lender needs to actually identify, what they need to analyze before they could give out this money. They need to carry out risk analysis, and then what are the risk mitigation factors that they need to put in place, because the risk needs to be assessed earlier enough rather than trying to react to losses when they have already occurred. So some of these risks will depend on the level of exposure that they are about to put themselves into. So now, what are the next slide here is now talking about the type of risk that a typical REproject will have. Lenders will have to look at it from technological point of view, technical availability, technical lifeline, and the power degradation, whether through the solar panels or other balance of equipment. You need to analyze the technology that these developers wish to deploy. Next is the political risk. Yes, a lender will have to evaluate the regional stability, the country stability, the site community stability, and look at it holistically. Look at the regulatory framework. Are they friendly enough before you give out this money? So it is very, very important for a lender to carry out political risk assessment before giving out their money. Third, you need to look at the permitting issue, the land license and lease agreement. Is it in line with what the lender, the developer wrote in their feasibility, you need to look at it again from the environmental impact assessment approval. Is the project actually approved? Is it being planned at a location that is allowed? Safety regulation. You need to also look at it. Is the equipment safe in that location? Is the equipment safe based on the regulation of the country? All these things need to be evaluated under the risk assessment. The lender will also need to look at it from the cost forecast point. You need to look at the CapEx, the variable operational expenses, the fixed operational expenses, the maintenance reserve account. You need to look if this developer has actually over exaggerated some of these costs, or if these costs are actually within the limit of borrowing. It is very, very important that cost forecast is being assessed thoroughly. Next is the energy resource of that particular location. Here, I think this is just like a 50-50 thing, because we can only work based on the simulation model, data, quality of realization, and variables. All these things need to be looked into, either not only for that particular period, but trying to look at it for the past few years, let's say 10, 15, 20 years. How has the energy resource be? And then you now forecast, like, okay, in the next 10, 15 years that this developer is to be paying. Let's assume the past energy resource probability of it being available. You can use the past record to actually predict the future. So energy resource is another very, very important risk assessment tool that needs to be evaluated. Next is the time schedule and contract risk in terms of duration of planning phase, starting of construction, the whole construction time, and the start of operation. This particular risk to me is to some extent flexible. It will actually depend on the developer and his team, how they want it to go. It is one of those risks that can actually be altered. Unlike the energy resource that looks fixed or looks out of the developer's capacity or range. The seventh risk that to be analyzed here is that of the weather event, which also seems to be very close to that the fifth one, which is the energy resource. In terms of the lightning strike, extreme wind condition, extreme temperature, sandstorm and wind movement, flood, all these have to do with the natural disaster, which is actually out of human power. The last risk label mentioned here is the market risk, which could either be in terms of the contractual risk, the interest rate, whether it is high or low or within the capacity and capability of the main player. Lastly, we can also look at it from the price fluctuation and securing of equipment. You cannot give out, a lender will not give out a loan based on the fact that the developer will be doing the purchase, the procurement in January, and then also December of that particular year, the procurement has not been carried out. Here, there's a lot of risk involved, the contractual risk, the interest rates will have gone high, the capability of the main player will be in doubt. Next is risk management. After risk has been assessed, identified, the lender needs to manage the risk. You need to manage the undesirable outcome that may come up. And here, financial institutions or lenders usually follow a systematic approach to doing this. Like we have said, this portion of the webinar may not really deal much details into the risk assessment and management topic because it's a wide topic. However, we're only just going to scratch the surface of this topic. Just give us a faint idea of likely things we might need when we want to borrow money, so that when next a lender is trying to do his or her due diligence, we should know the reason why they are doing that and what are the likely things they might want to know or ask. So, effective risk management actually encompasses a feedback loop from managers, either from branch to senior managers and sometimes to the board of directors. You need to get a feedback from each of these people on the reason why a lender should withhold or go ahead to give such funds to the borrower. Next, we have 5 steps to carrying out risk management feedback. 1. The lender will need to identify, assess, and prioritize the risk. You need to know which are high risk, medium, or low risk projects, renewable energy projects. You need to identify them, you need to assess them, you need to prioritize them. Next, you develop strategies to manage this risk. The way you develop this, you apply the strategy to deal with a low priority risk would be quite different from the way a lender will strategize against a high risk project. So, the second step is for a lender to actually develop the strategy that will help them to manage such risk. The third risk management tool is to develop a tactics that will be used to mitigate the risk identified. Next will then be to assign responsibility and implement. So, assigning responsibility and implementing them is another key role. You need to assign who does what, so that the feedback from each of these senior managers who are involved in this loan, their feedback will have to be put into consideration. So, we need to assign responsibility. Who checks what? And lastly, it goes to testing effectiveness and evaluating results. You need to test the effectiveness of the outcome of all the last 4 risk management feedback. You need to test it, you need to evaluate it, and then the results will now tell whether this fund should be released or not. So these 5 steps to risk management feedback is very, very, very important in giving out funds. This could, one important note that we need to have in our mind that this strategy may not actually be only for big projects. Those user financing products too can also be subjected to risk management feedback. This will help. We don't just sit down and then begin to, for the sake of giving out products, and then begin to give out products to users without carrying out our risk assessment. Lastly, we talk about mitigating risk. From the picture here, we see the lender and the borrower trying to sit down and say, okay, how best can we mitigate this risk? In terms of the technical, in terms of the legal, in terms of the financial, or even the environmental risk. We need to analyze deeply the conditions to which these issues are subjected. Whether we are using an in-house analyst or using an external consultant, we will now look at the whole structure holistically and come up with recommendation on whether to go ahead to give these funds or not. So when next you apply for a project and you see risk involved and risk mitigation, you should be able to know exactly what they are talking about. So the next slide here, we'll try to expand the technology under the renewable energy in terms of the large solar power plants, solar thermal, solar hydro, and wind. And then we now talk about what likely risk issues each of these technology may have. And then finally, what risk management can be considered. That's what this table is actually dealing with. So now, for example, let's take the solar PV that we're talking about, which initially we even talked about briefly in terms of we need to look at the component breakdown, we need to look at the weather damage and the test and vandalism. What the key risks, we need to analyze these key risks that are behind this. And also we need to look into the risk management consideration in terms of what performance guarantee is available. Mostly equipment such as panel will have up to 25 years, and then others such as the balance of equipment have less years of warranty. All these need to be put into consideration. We need to look at the standard component and the ease at which you can actually substitute them when they come to their end of years. We also need to look at the maintenance consideration. What consideration is this developer trying to put into the maintenance of this equipment? So, same applies to the solar thermal, solar small hydro, and then the wind power. You need to really look at each of them in details in order to know what is actually applicable. This next slide is also trying to touch the biomass power plant and also the biogas. The risk involved in all this in terms of fuel supply and availability, environmental liability that is associated with it, and then in terms of the risk management, the long-term contracts can solve the resource problem of fuel handling cost or emission control. Each of these need to really be dealt with at the stage before money is given out. The next slide will be talking about Greco Financial modeling. So to end this training, we will have work activities which we are building out in terms of to rank the various sources of financing in order of importance and give reasons for your choice of selection. So we are expecting you to look at it, various sources of financing available to you, and then try to rank them in order of importance to you and your project, and then give reasons why you have taken such choice of selection. Thank you.
So, all this talk about different financing options definitely left a few of you a little bit confused, perhaps thinking, "Eesh, this is a bit much, quite a few requirements here, not too sure if our company meets up to this." Well, perhaps we've got the option for you here at Greco Powered Energy. We have Greco Financing, and we'll briefly go over how Greco Financing can actually help you see a project to reality. So what are we offering? We're offering new opportunities for you to actually build your capacity whilst you're actually going on this journey to develop your own renewable energy project. Reduce pretty much all your risk exposure. You have only your own cost to bear, which is basically your survival cost. But on a more serious point of view, in the long term of the project, when it even goes ahead and into existence, your financial risk exposure will be very, very limited. You will only be looking at your monthly O&M risk exposure there. But through Greco Finance, you would have access to finance of up to $10 million for your project. So obviously that shows you that you can embark on quite large scale projects. You have part ownership in the project for the entire life of the project. It's not one of those setups where you come with your project and someone just pays you a little bit off and then, they're off enjoying the fruits of your labor further down the line. You're carried along for the whole journey. And so all through the journey, you're actually building your capacity as you transition through all the different steps of the project. So this is ideal for startup companies as well, or individuals that are, making the transition from, maybe full-time employment in the industry to wanting to be, business consultants in the sector. And obviously it's a great opportunity to be a critical part of the clean energy transformation that is going on across the world, because we all know green is the future. What requirements? Now, first and foremost, there has to be commercial or industrial customers. You look at people like, your rice mill processors or people in the bottling industry, those kind of customers. But ideally, they have to be commercial or industrial customers. Residential households and things like that are generally not, they definitely don't qualify for the kind of financing that we provide, first of all. But secondly, I'll just explain a little bit. One of the issues we provide in financing for renewable energy projects is a lot of people fail to realize the element of energy efficiency. So you have to improve the usage of energy. You have to be able to demonstrate by applying certain things, either energy efficient bulbs or devices. You're able, putting in meters, you're able to actually regulate and improve the way you use energy, thereby reducing the energy you actually use, the net quantity of energy you use, and thereby reducing your cost. So that's the whole thing about also going clean. It's also about reducing your usage of the quantity of electricity. So in a commercial and industrial setting, it's a lot easier to obviously demonstrate to, factory manager, the savings, just, okay, if you spend $5,000 now, you save 10% on your energy bill. The guy looks, I'm spending $20,000 a year on my energy bill, 10%, okay, over 5 years, I'm saving $10,000, okay, that makes sense. So with residential customers, that's a little bit tricky and stuff, and then usage, everybody using electricity at different times because obviously people are operating their lives at different patterns, people working, day jobs, night jobs, working from home, all those kind of things. The business has to be in operation for at least 4 years. The main reason for this is because of the financials. Because you have to be able to present 3 years of audited accounts to be able to show that the business is actually a profitable business, or they're in a growing position, or they have access to enough collateral to be able to cover the size of investments for the power plant. And obviously, because the idea is you're going to be providing energy for this power plant over a long period of time, and for this, customer over a long period of time, you want to be able to see evidence that they are already performing in a way that they will be around for, the foreseeable future, at least a decade. So you obviously want to see also some evidence of equity of utility bills being paid, including diesel purchases, at least for the last 12 months. Ideally, you would want a situation where you would have a record over a couple of years. Also, for your energy analysis purpose and for costing purposes, and also just to demonstrate that obviously your customer is like, an ideal customer. All those record keeping and things like that obviously are important. It shows that the business knows what they're doing. They're definitely people that are forward thinking. You don't want to be trying. Solar is definitely not for everybody. It's not every type of customer, because they might be in the right type of business, but the customer themselves sometimes might not really be the right fit, because obviously they will not want to implement those energy efficiency steps that I was talking about. So when you bring in a system, they're overloading the system and you start having system failures and all those kind of little glitches in your system. Obviously, your ideal customer you want to make sure that they have sufficient roof space or land space for the PV arrays, because obviously the main solution that you're offering is solar, so you want to make sure you have enough space around. You want to be in a situation where you obviously as the one that has rights to be developing this. You don't want to come and start the finance process and then someone else goes behind and, signs a deal with your customer and you've just wasted your time and everybody's effort and resources. And so obviously you need to do the energy needs assessment, which needs to include at least the energy demand profile showing what the maximum energy need is, quantum of energy needed, and all those little details. But obviously they're very, very important. See if the project is bankable for the based on the customer. Obviously, some of this information can be deduced based on the utility bills if you're not able to carry out an energy audit using an actual meter and everything. But obviously, we'll come to that at a later stage. Now, so obviously, what is our promise? So once you pass all the initial steps, you meet all the requirements, Greco Power and Energy will actually carry out a full feasibility study of your project. So once the full feasibility study is carried out, that would then feed into the system design. The system design would then allow for proper costing and for us to also evaluate things like the finance mix. If there's going to be, obviously, there's definitely going to be a hybrid financing. There's going to be an equity, the hybrid financing option that will be applied. That would then translate into the, final. We're saying power purchase agreement here, just using this term as a general term for the final costing and how payments will be agreed, and everybody will be signed into that final contract and how payments will be handled for the electricity used. Then obviously the next thing is to go ahead and build the power plant and commission it. This whole process generally, from the system design to the building of the hybrid plant, generally should take about 6 months. In worst case scenarios, you're looking about 12 months, depending on the size of the facility. And obviously, there are certain elements that have to be imported. So there are a few elements, but generally the import speeds are very good nowadays. You can generally have a whole system delivered in Nigeria in less than 2 weeks, basically. And even the clearance nowadays is a lot more efficient than they used to be. So you can pretty much have everything on site in a month and your whole system up and running, in a month as well. So yeah, the whole development build site can go pretty quickly. Obviously, as I said, you're going to be around for the lifetime of the project. But Greco Power and Energy is going to ensure that at least for the first 10 years of the project, we're going to be on it, co-managing, overseeing all the O&M with you and everything, making sure that there's quality assurance on all the goings on with the plant. And obviously, with the bill collection, is very important because there are going to be finance elements that obviously are tied into the purchase agreement. So obviously the first 10 years of this is going to be very important because that element has to be paid off as well efficiently. But generally this is the promise that you get, and all you gotta do is pretty much just once you identify the project, the customer, you do a pre-feasibility study yourself, your company or as an individual, you can outsource it. A basic pre-feasibility study would also let you know if it's worth going ahead to the next step. It will pretty much answer all the questions yourself. And obviously from there, if you see something that is worthwhile, then you can obviously take it to the next step. As I said, you want a situation where you want to have that exclusivity agreement to be the renewable energy developer, and have at least 12 months, because obviously some of these financing deals can take a little bit of time. But having said that, if the project ticks all the boxes and the pre-feasibility study is pretty much translates into a full feasibility study quick enough, then yeah, you can obviously get your financing done within a couple of months or a few months, and we can move into the real juicy part of construction of the project. So the very simple thing to do is obviously submit your company profile, your individual profile as well. With your company profile, obviously, ideally you have all your lead consultants and company directors as well, so we don't need to obviously do separate personal profiles, because that would be within your company profile, I would imagine. But obviously, if you're applying as an individual, as a consultant that is working out there and has developed the lead and all that, you give us your personal profile, professional background, almost like so obviously we know who we're dealing with and stuff, and fraud and all those kind of, anti-terrorism, and we have to comply with all those kind of regulations. We're signatory to the United Nations Global Compact, so we have to obviously adhere to the highest standards. And obviously, when you're sending an email, please put the subject Greco Finance, so it doesn't get lost in with maybe general inquiries or something like that. But yeah, Greco Finance, you want that as your subject, and send that in. So yeah, it's a very straightforward process. Sorry, I was not one of our very elaborate presentations, but it's pretty much straight to the point. We have a lot going on, and we're just taking some time out here to just open up the opportunity so that we can help other people as well in the sector get their projects up and running. So yeah, you can always contact us through our various means, social media handles, officially. Obviously, we have our website, grecopower.com.ng, I beg your pardon, and you can email us or call us. Thank you very much for your time today.